That can't work. One man, one vote cannot work in a plural society. Rather, each group in a plural society must be recognized as a unit of the state. They did it in Lebanon. And so now he embarks upon a laborious task of meeting with all the different tribes and all the different religious groups. He did not make the mistake of convening a constitutional conference and bring everybody under one roof to negotiate it, because you would have ended in chaos. He chose a wiser path. Nabi Muhammad ﷺ went to each group and patiently sat with them and listened to them and heard what they had to offer. What are our basic demands from the state? And having met with all of them, he carefully and skillfully constructed a constitutional agreement which came to be known as the Mithaq of Medina, the first written constitution in the world, really. And this constitutional agreement delivered the basic duties and protected the basic rights of all the constituent parts of the state. And so, while that Islamic state in Jerusalem may be considered to have been a unitary state, where all the citizens are a homogeneous whole, this one in Medina may be described as a plural model of a state, in which those who have faith in Allah are only one part of the state. And the Sharia, or the law from Allah, which is enforced on the believers, is not enforced on those who are not Muslims. You don't take the law of Islam and enforce it on the Jews. No. Nor do you take the law of Islam and enforce it on the pagan Arabs. No. But the law of Islam is enforced on the Muslims. So one more time, the state in Medina is also a Khilafah state, as the state of David and Solomon alayhi salam. The state in Medina recognizes Allah's sovereignty to the extent that you believe in Allah. It recognizes Allah's supreme authority to the extent that you believe in Allah. And it recognizes Allah's law as the supreme law to the extent that you belong to the community of those who believe in Allah. So you may want to call this a democratic state, huh? Because it recognizes the rights of all. There's freedom of belief. There's freedom of worship. If you want to worship the idol, that's your freedom. This Khilafah state needs to be described in a little bit more detail now. It did away with petty nationalisms. You may belong to a tribe called the Aus or another tribe called the Khazraj. You may be Muhajirun from Mecca, you may be Ansar from Medina. But you are now members of a universal community that supersedes petty nationalism. You're Muslim. And once you are a Muslim, you are the brother of every other Muslim. It doesn't matter whether he was born in Medina or whether he came from outside of Medina, you all have equal status as citizens of this state to the extent that you belong to this community. And so emerged an Islamic state, which is part of a larger state, the state of Medina. Let me repeat. You have the emergence of an Islamic state with citizens who are only Muslims. The Jews in Medina are not a part of a Muslim state. Have you got peanuts in your head? Huh? The pagan Arabs in Medina are not part of an Islamic state. Have you got peanuts in your head? But they are a part of the state of Medina. Because this is a plural model of a state. To the extent that you belong to the Islamic component of the state, the community of Muslims, this state does not distinguish between people of different nationalities. If you were in China and you took the Shahada and you became a Muslim, you don't need you don't need a visa to come to Medina. No. From the time you take the Shahada and you reach to Medina, you are admitted into the state as an equal member of all the other Muslims in the state. Number two, when you come to Medina, you're Chinese. When you come to Medina and you're allowed to enter into the state, you don't need a residence permit to reside in the state. No. You have the freedom to reside. Number three, if you want to get a job in Medina to earn your livelihood, you don't need a work permit. No. The state recognizes you to have equal status and equal rights with all other Muslims. Number four, if we have to appoint a head of state and we choose an apparatus, a methodology for appointing, today they use elections, then you are allowed to vote like everybody else. And your vote will have equal status with all the others, if you use this method. And so a model of a state emerged, a Khilafah state, which recognized the right of every other Muslim, irrespective of where he was born, irrespective of what kind of nationality he'd had, irrespective of which tribe he belonged to. Number one, the right to enter. You don't need a visa. Number two, the right to reside. You don't need a residence permit. Number three, the right to seek your livelihood. You don't need a work permit. Number four, the right to participate in the political process on the basis of political equality with all other Muslims. You don't need citizenship. This model of a state exists in Israel today. That impostor Israel recognizes the right of any Jew from any part of the world that he may come to enter Israel. He doesn't need a visa. To reside in Israel, he doesn't need a residence permit. To seek his livelihood in Israel, he doesn't need a work permit. And to participate in the political process in Israel as an equal of every other Israeli. Because once he comes to Israel, he's given citizenship, Israeli citizenship. That model